March on Al Jazeera. In 2009, Al Jazeera visited the cities worst affected by the financial downturn. Now, 2 years later, we return as European leaders discuss the debt crisis.
In a new 8-part series, Al Jazeera looks at women's rights and maternal health. Real women and their personal stories.
It's 20 years since the Arab League held its annual summit in Iraq. An Al Jazeera news special has full coverage from Baghdad.
Branded a lunatic by some and an inspirational revolutionary by others, Al Jazeera follows the controversial Norman Finkelstein.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come
in a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Personal blogs by professional journalists. blogs.aljazeera.net.
Muammar Gaddafi's shrinking territory. Libya's former interior minister tells Al Jazeera most of the country is now in the hands of the protesters.
Now there is only Tripoli and a few other towns in Gaddafi's hands. That is why I urge the Libyan people that there is no going back.
It's 2000 hours GMT, 10 p.m. now in Tripoli. I'm Kamal Santa Maria with continuing live coverage on Al Jazeera of the uprising in Libya. There are reports of renewed violence in the capital, Tripoli, where residents say the government is arming pro-Gaddafi civilians, while migrant workers stream out of Libya fearful of being mistakenly targeted as foreign mercenaries. So here we go, more from Libya as the battle for control of that country rages. The United Nations Security Council is meeting to consider measures against Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's regime. The draft resolution calls for an arms embargo and an assets freeze. Much of the country, though, we've got to say, believed to be out of Muammar Gaddafi's control at the moment. His grip on power may soon be confined only to the capital. But fighting said to be continuing in key areas that includes Misrata and Zawiya. Well, Hor Abdul Hamid is in eastern Libya for us. She has this update on the latest events across the country.
Praying to God for help in surviving an intense battle in Zawiya, 50 kilometers west of the capital Tripoli. Gaddafi is the enemy of God, this protester cries out. Seconds later, the gunfire gets much closer. This video was sent to Al Jazeera after being filmed on Saturday morning. Zawiya is a strategic town with an oil terminal where opposition forces are gathering to drive Muammar Gaddafi from his last remaining strongholds.
Now there's only Tripoli and a few other towns left. That's why I urge the Libyan people that there's no going back. Going back's impossible. We have to move forward. All the patriotic, courageous and respected Libyan youth should help the people of Tripoli to carry out their duties.
Much of eastern Libya is already in opposition control, but these images set to be filmed on Friday show massive protests in Misurata, another western city 210 kilometers from the capital. Al Jazeera cannot independently verify this video or another said to be from Misurata that appears to show more soldiers joining the protesters' cause. Libya's head of special forces, the latest Gaddafi ally, now rallying for his removal.
I place all my expertise and capabilities at the service of the youth revolution. I urge all honest members of the special forces to rejoin their units immediately and to protect the gains of the February 17th revolution and protect the lives of the Libyan people and their property.
And this video shows exactly why Libyans need protecting. Heavily armed men drag away a limp body and stuff it into a car. Uploaded on YouTube, it also can't be verified, but is said to be filmed in Tripoli during Friday's clashes. Painting a different picture, these images, shot by Associated Press on a government-sponsored media offensive under the restrictions of Gaddafi loyalists.
Tripoli is 100% safe. There are no problems. People are going about their business. There are no problems and people are going to work.
It would seem this vision is about as useful as state television to show what's really happening in Libya, or just how much longer its under-siege leader can hang on. Most of the oil-rich East has fallen into the hands of the opposition. There is a sense of security, but it's a volatile situation. The opposition also says it has taken control of oil refineries, now operating at a minimal capacity. For people here, the most important is to retain the gains, keep the momentum, while they wait and see what happens in the west of the country. Hud Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera, Eastern Libya.
As we well know by now, the Gaddafi families show no signs of relinquishing their rule. In a television interview, the Libyan leader's son, Saif al-Islam, has blamed the crisis on foreign elements. Bit of a chilling warning too. He said this: what the Libyan nation is going through has opened the door to all options, and now the signs of civil war and foreign interference have started. He also said an agreement has to be reached because the people have no future unless they agree together on a new program. A couple of other strands to tell you about. A new video which has come out from the eastern city of Al-Baida. It shows one of Muammar Gaddafi's palaces. Have a look at these pictures. Parts of it you can see destroyed during the unrest as protesters tried to take over the city. The palace had iron doors leading to underground tunnels which apparently went on for several kilometres. And in the opposition-held city of Benghazi in eastern Libya, there are signs of life slowly returning to normal. Schools are still closed, but some shops and banks have reopened. They had been closed for days during the violence which drove pro-Gaddafi loyalists out. Protesters have now turned their energy to clean-up efforts, but there are a few worries about whether the newly formed city council can provide basic services. Here's an interesting one as well. The Libyan government begins offering financial sweeteners to the population, a bid to perhaps quell the protests. This came out on the official Jamhuriya television agency on Saturday, which carried two urgent announcements. One, a so-called popular committee will offer 500 Libyan dinars to all families in Libya. The second one offers all unemployed graduates loans from their nearest branches. So an interesting move by the Libyan government as the turmoil goes on amongst their people. Now, foreign migrant workers have been streaming across the border from Libya into neighbouring Tunisia to escape the violence. They include many Africans who fled in fear of their lives because they're afraid of being mistaken for mercenaries. This report from Nazneen Mashiri.
Libya is one of the most dangerous places in the world right now if you're black and African. Anti-government protesters thought Seydou Boubacar Jalou and his friend were mercenaries. Pro-Gaddafi forces targeted them for being foreigners. In the end, these Malians fled for their lives by night. They say the roads out of the west are still in the hands of those loyal to Gaddafi.
They were wearing army uniforms, they have berets, everything that an army has. They have Kalashnikovs, handguns, machetes, clubs. 15 kilometers from a small town we saw a Libyan tank. The situation is very, very dangerous. Every day there are more than 100 who die. Every day there are shootings. The most dangerous situation is for foreigners like us. And also us, black people. Because Gaddafi brought soldiers from Chad, from Niger. They are black and they are killing Arabs.
120 kilometers from this Tunisian border, Zawiya. The town is now in the hands of the people. But Egyptian refugees describe a bloody massacre on Thursday, which left many dead.
I was in Zawiya's Martyrs Square. There was a group of army men in the square who attacked the protesters. It was a very fierce confrontation. They were using heavy weapons, at least 15 to 20 dead, and I had footage of what happened, but the Libyan authorities on the border took my phone. Gaddafi wants to commit a crime with the absence of any media.
The problem for journalists right now is that this is as close as we can get to Western Libya. We have to rely on first-hand accounts of people coming across this border, many of them too frightened to talk about what's happening there. There are still very few Libyans crossing into Tunisia. Most of these people are Egyptian migrant workers who fear reprisals from Gaddafi forces if they ever return. Libya is where they found work and built their lives. They now have an uncertain future. Nazanin Bashiri, Al Jazeera, on the Tunisian-Libyan border.
And China's stepped up its efforts to get more than 30,000 of its citizens from Libya. As the crisis escalates, a ferry carrying more than 2,000 Chinese workers arrived in Malta on Saturday. Our correspondent Cal Perry was there to see them come in.
Weary faces tell the story of a difficult journey across rough waters. These 2,000 workers were just evacuated from Benghazi and brought here to Malta. An unusual scene as a Chinese flag is unfurled on an Italian ship in a European harbor.
My two best friends, they're still upstairs in this cruise. They were sick. They couldn't get off the bed because in the past one day and night, this journey in the sea, it's really tough for us. The ship is shaking really badly, and they throw up a lot of times, and they headache. They didn't eat anything in the whole day and night.
Doesn't matter. Maltese authorities tend to those who are most in need. Others huddle inside, eating hot food brought fresh for them. The smiles of those who have just arrived reflect only the relief of being somewhere safe, but memories of what these workers fled from come rushing back.
People, they come in to attack us. They use the steel bar, this knife like this long, and they hijacked our trucks, cranes, and every machine and materials they can get. Look at my face. This is. I hope my mom and dad won't see me like this, but we just been through a lot of, and it's a tough week.
Now, in safe waters, everyone's trying to find a signal, eager to both receive information and let their loved ones know they've gotten out safely. While the Chinese workers are being offloaded from this ship and taken to the airport to catch a flight home, you can see behind me the HMS Cumberland